So, I've played a handful of gacha games before and after Genshin, and you guys, at least for the most part, know how I feel about them. I'm not the biggest fan of them. Their systems and how a lot of them operate are not exactly my cup of tea. Before Genshin, I was strictly an open world MMORPG and fighter game guy. Whether it was a dynamic fighting game or a side scroller fighting game, I always just stuck with those genres. Well, let me be perfectly honest here. Amongst those games were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of very shitty, long-nighted hours of both Destiny 1 and 2, along with Overwatch soon after. And you know what? It would be disingenuous for me to say that I had shitty nights and hours on Destiny, as when Destiny 1 was still popular, back in the day, I enjoyed playing that game all the time, 24/7 with my friends, did everything I possibly could in both games. It's Overwatch that I'm glad that I don't play anymore. I met some amazing people in Overwatch, but I also met some really shitty people in Overwatch, which I'm glad that I don't really speak to anymore. For the exception of some. I do miss some of them, to be honest. I thank God every day I don't play Overwatch anymore. But amongst those games were tiny gotchas that I didn't really care too much about. I'd sign into them and do a daily or two and use the free currency it gave new players to get a character I wanted, and then I would just kinda fuck off and leave. I played these gotchas mostly one at a time. I didn't really like investing time and effort into the gotchas I played, as I had much bigger, much more fun games to focus on. I think one of them was some top-down mecha fighter arena gacha game with some scantily clad female pilots or whatever. I think it was called like Steel Journey or Steel Saga, Iron Saga, something like that. I don't know, but I think that game was ass, and it still is. But it filled my time for the time being, or whatever. But then something happened. Something horrible happened. COVID hit, and the face of the gacha scene changed. While everything ended up getting worse in the world, gacha games got bigger, better, and much higher quality, which will lead into some pretty serious obsessions over certain games, but we'll get into that later. What's up, guys? My name's Ragashu, and on this channel, I'm going to be talking about gachas and potentially news surrounding gachas. If you like what you see and like what you hear, go ahead and like and subscribe. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about how Wuthering Waves is a gacha I can really come to appreciate, and I look forward to seeing where it'll end up. Over the years, gacha games have evolved immensely. Like, I'm talking, gacha games went from being Bizarro to Superman real quick. Gacha games were never a big entertainment point in my life years ago. And I didn't even know gacha games existed back when I was first starting off in high school and such. They were so out of the way for me that my ass literally couldn't even conceive that these games were real. I was a Dragon Ball player, a Left 4 Dead player, a Destiny player, Mortal Kombat and Overwatch player. I played a variety of Korean, Japanese, and Chinese MMORPGs like the dreaded L Sword and the forever confusing to me when I was a little ass kid Eden Eternal, and I gotta say, man, that game was weird as fuck. But anyways, these games were all games that kept me entertained one way or another. And then, out of the blue, COVID hit, like I said. I was already out of high school at this time, thank God, and I was pretty hype about the idea of all the responsibility being exhumed by a super disease until I realized how serious it was. I mean, there was bodies stacked on bodies in New York City, to the point they couldn't even fit how many people were dying from it in the morgues. And I was like, damn, they hit my city like that hard? Hope I don't catch that shit and not die. So, I didn't die, but I did eventually catch COVID, but none of that shit matters. What matters is a new game I ended up seeing pop up was going to be released in September. A little game called Genshin Impact. Now, at first, I simply thought this was going to be a new free open world game that was going to be live service with maybe a character creator or something, I don't know. The best example of today's time would be, I thought it was going to be like how Tower of Fantasy ended up. Just without the gacha, because I didn't know it was a gacha to begin with. I opened it up and by God, I was taken aback by all of its colors and beautiful looking characters, and seeing Jean and Mona, I was like, oh God, I think this game is for me. And then it ended up being mid as hell. But I still played it though, and actually enjoyed myself whenever I was playing with friends, no matter how bad the multiplayer was in the beginning. I played several gacha on and off, as I mentioned before I played Genshin, and this game kind of blew all of them out of the water. I mean, the world was big, at least bigger than any of the other gachas that I played since they weren't open world. The characters were beautiful, and the story and cutscenes were semi-interesting. I have more fond memories than bad ones with my friends on Genshin Impact, though I was addicted to Genshin to the point where it was kinda crippling, and even spent a few $100s to keep trying to get Jean, in which I didn't get her until 3 years later, after a whole bunch of pain and suffering, and man, the gacha system was questionable at the time. Still is to this day, to be honest, but we'll get more into that into the video. I promise you, this conversation leads into Wuthering Waves, like right now. So a variety of different games were trying to emulate the success of the ever-expanding and infinitely successful open-world gacha formula that was Genshin Impact. More and more gacha games were starting to come out, higher and higher quality. Now, obviously, all of these new game announcements that were happening and are happening are great and all, but I started to explore to see if there's any other types of gachas that maybe I could have also enjoyed. So I found a variety of games, but Punishing Gray Raven and Ether Gazer caught my eye the most and kept my attention. I love sci-fi action, but the thing that really held it back for me is I am a sucker for open world games, and neither of these games were open world. I don't care what anyone says, I enjoy a good open world game, and even if there ends up being nothing to do sometimes, I'll still enjoy the vibes of the world in general. Now, that's not to say that Punishing Gray Raven not being an open world game is what caused me to stop liking it. There were a variety of other problems that I explained in one of my older videos talking about my issues with Punishing Gray Raven, but the world of Punishing Gray Raven was so fascinating. The dark fantasy aspect of all the technology, this man-made super disease, these amazing characters that ended up becoming constructs and fighting in a dreary and dark world was just all things that I ate up immediately. But of course, the more that I played Punishing Gray Raven, as it was my favorite between the two games of PGR and Ether Gazer, I sat there wishing, man, I wish there was an open world version of PGR so that I can actually run about and explore these horrific looking areas, explore these dilapidated places, explore these amazingly described scenarios that they do in their visual novel style of storytelling. And boom, like my ass had some goddamn fairy godparents, my wish was granted. Wuthering Waves got announced and I was ecstatic. It had already been years of playing Genshin that had finally broke my obsession with it, for the most part anyway, and was awaiting to dedicate my entire life and savings to Wuthering Waves. Jokingly, of course. But I mean seriously, I remember I used to be sitting there, like, Kuro Games, grant me an open world version of Punishing Gray Raven and my life is yours, type shit. But when the game finally came out, its reception was mixed, but I won't be talking about other people's experiences. My own experience was absolutely golden. The game worked perfectly for me because I had a really good system to work with it already. There were so many things I enjoyed about Wuthering Waves that I was just feeling relieved. Relieved that the company was treating the game the way it was being treated. One of the major things I liked was the theme. I love futuristic and cybernetic style themes, especially in a post-apocalyptic setting, even though Wuthering Waves seems post-apocalyptic. Punishing Gray Raven's technology and world was very appealing to me, and I always wanted to traverse it, and I have a chance to do that even if it's by a small margin in Wuthering Waves, especially if they decide to go out of their way to make an extension of the map or just make any map in general that's truly an even more dreary and hopeless post-apocalyptic landscape. Still a little disappointed, it feels like they lost their artistic identity, as I mentioned in one of my older videos, but aside from that, there were many other things that I liked, that I really appreciated. For example, the banners feel relatively convenient to me. Sure, they're still 50-50 for the characters themselves, but at the very least, it will still lead into a guaranteed. And the weapon banner, God, the weapon banner is so good. with guaranteed weapons every time you get a 5-star from it. It was like a dream for me to be able to know if I get a character, I don't have to work my ass off or pay money to get their signature weapon. I don't have to go through 2 or 3 different kinds of 50/50s just to get their weapon. No fate points to acquire here, it's just there for me. It feels very generous and doesn't make me feel discouraged to be able to make my characters as strong as possible. Hell, even the standard weapon banner selector is the same way, with no penalty of wanting to switch which one you want. It's things like this that can bring a gacha game's longevity to a prosperous and extended time. I don't even need to go further in depth about how good of a thing this is for the game. Aside from its gacha mechanics, the compensation we received for all the issues that came up was outstanding. From them giving a free 5-star character away, to giving us enough pulls to practically get an event character we want for free for any character that ended up coming out. Some players even holding out on wishing even still, waiting for a character they want. It's all absolutely incredible. Things like this is what really makes me genuinely believe that Kuro Games might eventually be able to bring this game to a point where they can just say, I alone am the honored one in the gacha community, with more areas, mechanics, and events that they can add. The character designs and models are absolutely outstanding, and it's hard to think of another gacha game that has better models than them. Kuro Games showed us on numerous occasions that they are one of the kings of gacha combat, if not the king of gacha combat when it came to punishing Grey Raven. And when it comes to Wuthering Waves, the combat did not disappoint, with basic ground combos, launch into air combos, being able to start off with air combos, swap combos, plunging attacks that you'll be able to put into different kinds of combos. The combat in Wuthering Waves is more in-depth than I was expecting, even allowing you to just straight up juggle regular humans mobs in the overworld. Some characters straight up have transformation states and EX or super versions of their regular skills, with things that can alter it with different stacks that can be built to let loose devastatingly beautiful, powerful, and deadly moves to add on to your combos. I wasn't lying when I said I can really appreciate Wuthering Waves. I won't be taking it for granted. As soon as the time comes for me to wail, I'll feel like it's a well-deserved spend with how amazing and spectacular I think the game is, and how much further it can go. Wuthering Waves has shown me that there can indeed be gachas that are really good. And sure, I've played other gacha games that can be considered good, but to be honest, there are way too many slop gacha games out there with too many predatory practices amongst many other things. At least with Wuthering Waves, you know what you're spending on and you know what you're gonna get. You don't have to feel cheated or confused on what you're trying to get money for. Asteroids are easy to obtain. We're able to get more wishes than another game that releases certain new areas. But other than that, this is why I genuinely believe that Wuthering Waves is going to be one of the most successful gacha games of all time. And it's still going to be that way throughout the rest of gacha game history. But I want you to tell me what you guys think. Do you appreciate Wuthering Waves? Do you feel like Wuthering Waves delivered? Do you feel like Wuthering Waves is one of those gachas that's just a rare diamond in the rough? Like Larian Studios releasing BG3. Now, let's be real. We're not about to compare Wuthering Waves to BG3. But still, tell me what you guys think. Anyways, I want you all to take care, and peace.